Back in October was my grandson's 3rd birthday, and my daughter and I traveled down to North Carolina to be a part of it. Really cool, love that. If you've ever been a part of a 3-year-old birthday, you know what they're like. They're kind of all the same in one way or another. It's kids falling down, it's a couple diapers that need to be changed, parents standing around awkwardly because it's just weird, and then of course you have those kids that are crying, and then kids spilling things. That's kind of what happens in a 3-year-old birthday party. But they're really fun, and they generally have a theme. And so this year for my grandson, his current passion is a show called Spidey and Friends. It's like a preschool version of Spider-Man, and that's like his current passion. His world revolves around that. So of course I find him the best Spidey and Friends action figure and motorcycle set, and we're all into it. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're playing with them, and that is happening. It's really quite great, and just love that stuff. And there we are playing with his Spider-Man and Friends, and we're doing all the stuff that he wants to do, and he keeps creating scenarios where we go and we save the day. So we keep saving towns. That must be part of the show. I don't really know, but we keep going. He keeps creating scenarios where we come in with the good guys and we save the day. We save the day from the bad guys. Now, they're not really bad guys because it's like preschool stuff. They're really like naughty or disobedient. You know, that's really the way they pitch it, which is all fine for that age bracket. And so there we are. And the problem is we don't have any bad guys to save the day from. Well, that became a pretty serious problem. So I asked him, well, where are the bad guys? Where are the ones that we're going to save the town from? And we didn't have any. And I thought to myself, okay, that's a pretty serious problem. So how do you save the bad guys? How do you save the town from the bad guys if you don't have bad guys? And so one of the characters that he wanted was Electro, and Electro is a bad girl. She's actually female. So, and that's the one he wanted. So I'm like, well, we need that, because then if we're going to play this Spidey and Friends, we've got to have the bad guy to save the town for. What I didn't know before I made my commitment to him is that this character is really hard to find. Like, not just, oh, you just run to the store and get it. It kind of unravels. But I was on the floor with him. I looked him square in his little 3-year-old eyes, and I said, I'm going to find you Electro no matter what it takes. So I told my son that, and he said, Dad, you're not going to find it. It's sold out everywhere. This is like one of the hottest little $5 toys there is. I'm like, I'll find it. Don't you worry about that. So began the journey of traveling to every Walmart within a 30-mile radius of my son's house, and he was right. There was no Electro. Then I start calling people, my friends and family that live in other states, like, hey, I want you to go to Walmart and see if you can find this character, and nobody does. Even here, when I got home, I started traveling around, looking at different Walmarts, and any Walmart that I passed, I went in to buy Electro, and they didn't have it. Now you might go, well, you should have just went online. That's great, but if you go online and you order it, they just send you whichever one they want. We needed a specific character. I don't want just Spidey, and I don't want just Spin or Ghost Spider. I want Electro. So the journey began. I didn't realize what this little $5 character was going to cost me in time, effort, and of course, money. Whenever you set out to seek and find a specific goal, it's going to cost you something. And matter of fact, Jesus shoots us really straight on that. I should have known this. I mean, Jesus teaches us this in Luke chapter 14, verse 28. He gives us an illustration of building something. And listen to what he says. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? To count the cost of following always begins with searching, seeking. And that is still true today. There is a cost in seeking out Jesus. And just like that day on the floor, sitting looking eye to eye to my grandson, I didn't count the cost of my Electro search at all. But there's a price to be paid. And there's a cost when you seek Jesus. And what I see in the account of the wise men is exactly what I didn't do in my search for Electro. And I want to share that with you today so that I can learn from this, and you can as well. You see, they paid a price to seek a specific King of the Jews, just like I didn't count the cost, though, to seek a specific Spidey and Friends character. But let me show you what I mean. This is Matthew chapter 2, beginning at verse 1, and we'll read through verse 12. This is the account of the Magi, or the wise men from the east. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. When he called together all of the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. The wise men had an eye-to-eye moment, not with their grandson, but with a star. Look again at verse 2. Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we come to worship him. Before we get into anything else, it's really important for us to understand that the wise men were seeking a certain king, the King of the Jews. No other would do. Just like I was seeking Electro, no other character would do. That's my aim. That's my target. A certain king the wise men sought out. You see, why that matters so much is if you're not specific, if it's not certain, then how in the world will you know you've ever found it? It sounds so obvious, but sometimes we're really vague about what we're looking for. The wise men were searching for the King of the Jews. Now, today in 2023, we have to be equally as specific. Why? Because in our world today, there's ideas that you may have had, you may have said them, or at least has been said to you, where we say things like this: well, I'm not going to follow any kind of religion. I'm just spiritual. Well, that's great. Sounds really cool. Sounds really hip. And I really like the way it sounds. But when I start to play that out, how do I know I've ever found it? Because it's so vague. How do I practice that? How do I live it out? What does spiritual mean? How do I define it? How do you know when you found it? How does anything being spiritual work? It's vague. When you're searching, you have to be specific. The start of seeking has specificity. I wasn't just looking for any Spidey and Friends character. It had to be Electro. The wise men were seeking specifically the King of the Jews. So my question that we begin with, are you ready to seek Jesus? Are you seeking spirituality, or are you seeking specifically Jesus? Because when we're looking for a certain God, we need to know what we're looking for. In addition to that, we have to understand that seeking has a cost as well. So this certainty that we're looking for has a cost. The cost of time, the cost of resources, the cost of your world maybe being turned upside down. There's that price to be paid. Look, I spent a lot of time and money trying to find a $5 action figure. But more importantly, understanding, counting the cost in a specific search of the King of the Jews for the wise men as well. That price was to be paid as well. Look at Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. From the east. Now, that's easy to read past, but many people estimate that they traveled 900 miles to come to and find the King of the Jews. Now, 900 miles is quite a distance. I mean, if I think about it just today, from here in Albany to Charleston, South Carolina is about 900 miles. That'll take you 14 hours to drive, cost you about $105 in gas, and conservatively $45 in tolls, not to mention any hotels, food, or anything else. So you're looking at $150 minimum, plus time and effort, everything that goes along to travel that 900 miles. That's today. Now let's go back 2,000 years where you don't have highways like we do, we don't have cars. Traveling 900 miles is going to cost you a significant amount of time, cost you a significant amount of preparation, cost you a significant amount of resources. They understood that. They counted that cost. They knew this was going to cost them something, and they were prepared to travel that 900 miles, because you can't make it 900 miles 2,000 years ago if you haven't counted the cost and prepared for it. And they did. Seeking the King today equally has a cost. Maybe not like that, but there's a cost of effort, time, and maybe some degree of social credit. See, are you willing to pay the price to seek a certain king and count the cost? The same is still true today. So we count the cost, but there's also something else that happens when you're seeking out the specific King of the Jews, and that is this: it will bring change into your life. Promise, this will bring change. Look at Matthew chapter 2, the beginning of verse 11. The scripture says this: On coming to the house, meaning the wise men, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshipped him. These learned men, these wealthy men, these men of influence came and they bowed down and they worshipped the child. Now, I'm quite sure that brought some change in the way they saw at least this king. Now, did they expect it to be a child? Probably. That's probably, but where they found him was surprising. That's what brought change in their life. You see, they found him not in a palace, not in a place of significance, but just in a house, an ordinary house with ordinary parents. That was a change in the way they saw things. And how do I know that? Because when they went to search for the specific king of the Jews, they went to Jerusalem, where you would find the king. And he wasn't born in a palace. He wasn't born in a place of influence. He was born in a feeding trough, and then later they found him in a house. The wise men found him in a house, an ordinary parent's ordinary house. Like, I don't think that fit their idea of a king. I'm pretty sure that was a change in the way they saw things. That's why they went to Jerusalem. In their search for the king of the Jews, something changed. And what changed was the way they saw this king and their expectations. And the same is true for you and me. If you will search for the king with that degree of specificity in your own life, you will find change as well. It may change the way you see God, but there's other things that'll change as well. You. When you trust Jesus, things do change inside of you. You change from unforgiven to being forgiven. In Colossians chapter 3, verse 13, we see that you've forgiven as you forgive. Like, those types of things happen internally. You have a change in the way you think. You're transformed by the renewing of your minds. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 tells us that. There's a change in status. You move from creation to child of God. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. You change into the person he made you to be. You put on your new self. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. And that's not all. You change from what you thought he would be and the way you thought God would work. Isaiah chapter 55 verses 8 and 9 tells us his ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. The change happens not only in the way you perceive God, but the change happens within you. And I can tell you this, that I had significant change in the way I saw God when I began to seek Jesus, specifically seek Jesus. I began to change on the inside, the way I saw him, and then transformed inside out. My idea of Jesus changed, and he changed me all the way through. So we seek certain king. We understand there's a cost, and we also understand all kinds of changes going to happen in you and to you. And finally, seeking Jesus is going to do something else. It brings complications. Notice the wise men, again, seek the king of the Jews. They're specific, and they go to the most logical place. As I said before, they go to Jerusalem, where you would expect to find the king, and there they meet Herod. And this is where the complications start. Matthew chapter 2, verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. When he heard what? He heard that the King of Jews was born. And so his response to that is he's disturbed. And all of Jerusalem. Why? Because there's now a threat to his throne. And why are the people disturbed? Because they know this isn't going to go well for anyone. Because a threatened king is a dangerous king. And that is made quite clear later when Herod makes a decree for every child 2 years old and younger in the vicinity of Bethlehem to be slaughtered. Look at Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all of the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Not only is that an intense reality, but it also brings significant complications now in the relationships that the wise men have with Herod. So they don't even go back to him. They're warned not to, and they sneak out, and they're on their way to go back home. You see, aside of this monstrous action that Herod carries out, what I don't want you to miss is the complication that comes with the wise men and Herod now. In their specific search for the king of the Jews, they counted the cost. They had change that happened to them, but now the complications are happening. Herod, a man of means and a man of influence, well, he's now furious at the Magi because they double-crossed him. They outwitted him. They humiliated him. Now, for just a mere threat to his throne, we know what he did. Imagine being on his bad side, that you've intentionally double-crossed him. How do you think that's going to do? What do you think he would do to someone who has intentionally humiliated him? I don't think that things were smooth between the wise men and Herod. That certainly complicates things in their life. Now they have a very powerful, very serious enemy. Understand this, that your seeking of a specific king, king of the Jews, your seeking of Jesus, well, it might bring complications to your relationships as well. Not to Herod's level, of course. That's not what we're talking about here, but there may be people that just no longer want you around. There may be people that you find uninvite you to things. There may be people that avoid you. There may be people that now are adversarial towards you because you are seeking out and searching for Jesus. And that might be people that are close to you. You see, seeking Jesus brings complications, for sure. The wise men learned that. I've learned that. And as you search out Jesus, it's going to bring complications into your life as well. In your seeking of Jesus this Christmas, have you counted the cost? Or maybe a better question is, did you realize that there was a cost? And sometimes the cost is the complications as well. So this Christmas, I trust that you're going to count the cost, seek the specific Christ, and allow him to change you on the inside, not the complications that arise. Choose to seek Jesus. Allow him to transform you from the inside out. He is a good God, and all of the complications that may arise, he will walk with you through them as you discover what it means to follow Jesus this Christmas.
Pastor Paul is totally right. As we seek to follow Christ, it is going to cost us something, and we know that. If you've been walking with Christ for any amount of time in your life, you know that it costs you something, just like the wise men. But we also know that the reward in the end is so much more than what the world can offer now. From paradise to paradise, garden to garden, we will be with our Father once again. And that truly is the story of Jesus, the story of Scripture that we get to be a part of. Now, before I let you go, I just want to talk about Christmas Eve. That's December 24th, like every year. This year it's falling on a Sunday, which means that we have 2 worship services that day. So I'm going to start in the evening and then go to the morning. So Christmas Eve from 5 p.m. to 5:45, we have our Christmas Eve service. Now, it's 45 minutes, and that's on purpose. We know that that evening is busy for a lot of us. You got to go to certain dinners. You got to do maybe early gift exchanges. You got to go hang out with your family. Some of you may be coming home from work if you work on Sunday. Here's the thing. It's 5 to 5:45. We invite you to come and be a part of the significant, important, and punctual event that we have every year here at the church from 5 to 5:45. We invite you, we invite your friends, we invite your family. Please come join and worship the true meaning of the season, Jesus, here from 5 to 5:45, Christmas Eve evening. That being said, Christmas Eve is on a Sunday, and we're still having regular church, put that in quotes, regular church from 10 a.m. to 11 here at Waterford Wesleyan Church. We're going to be celebrating the last week of Advent. So I hope to see you at both or one of those services for Christmas Eve, getting us ready and prepared for Christmas Day, Monday morning, December 25th. So with all that out of the way, I hope that you have a great week leading up to Christmas. Do the last minute shopping that you have to do, go see friends and family. But most importantly, prepare for Christmas through worship, prayer, and seeking after Jesus this week. I'll see you next Sunday.